Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I'm your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart from COP Audio and Staging. Excuse me, I am the Grumpy Sound Guy himself, or so I'm told. If you actually get the time to know me, I'm actually a pretty nice guy, you know? Anyways, this week we are going to talk about dealing with house sound engineers from the perspective of a traveling band or a national act or something like that that's coming into a permanently installed system scenario, whether it be in a theater or a nightclub, that sort of thing. And the challenges and the dynamics that are included in working with someone you don't know who may or may not know what the hell they're doing. So stick around. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, if I could just have a moment of your time to talk to you about this channel. 49.8% of you guys watching this right now is not subscribed to this channel. Will you please hit that subscription button? It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel on the public side here. And then that gives us tools and resources and for my marketing team to be able to do what we need to do to get this content out to people who really enjoy this sort of thing. The other thing is, if you're super digging this and you'd like a deeper look into my world, then subscribe to the paid side of the YouTube channel. You can join for about the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you know, and then I do vlogs over there. I post content that never goes public, and I let you into my world. I let you into the CLP audio world, and I let you see what our day-to-day life looks like. Love you guys. Thank you for the support. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So let's just dive right in. Let me preface all the things I'm getting ready to say by saying I have been on both sides of this scenario. I spent many years as a house sound engineer in various places, from church production all the way up to secular nightclubs. I spent 5 years up until COVID, so from like 2014-15 to 2020 at a pretty big A-rated nightclub in Frederick, Maryland. I had a lot of success there, was very happy there for a whole bunch of years, but just like everything in life, everything has an expiration date. So it was time to move on. I left in January of 2020, and of course we all know what happened in March of 2020. COVID kind of kicked us all in the gonads, and we were all wondering if we were ever going to make it through to the other side. But we have. So let me say that I have worked with national artists in the Christian realm and in the secular realm, worked with an enormous amount of up-and-coming Nashville acts, contestants from the TV shows like American Idol, The Voice, all that kind of stuff. You know, America's Got Talent. Did some work with Mickey Guyton when she was coming up, you know, through the ranks at that place in Frederick. Trent Harmon, who I think was a Voice winner or American Idol winner, one or the other. All that stuff kind of mushes together after these years. Something that I'm not very good at is keeping track of all that, because I just don't care. You know, I don't really have an ego about anything that I do. I'm doing better at taking pictures of all the gigs and stuff like that, but that's really about working social media. But it is actually giving me some kind of digest of the stuff that I have done. I have been in this business a very long time and worked with a lot of, you know, big people and a lot of small people, more small than big. You know, I'm not trying to make myself out to be something I'm not. I have definitely consciously chosen to stay in the middle market most of my life, because the times that I went on the road and spent time on the road, I didn't really super enjoy it. It was really cool at first, and then it wasn't cool. So I just tried to stay close to home. Plus, I had kids and all that kind of stuff and everything. They're all grown now, and That is what it is. So I know what it is to be that guy. And then I've also been in traveling corporate bands, and stuff like that and everything, where we are having to be the outside entity coming in. So I can kind of speak to this from both sides of the conversation. The thing is, today, though, I'm responding to a private message that one of my followers sent to me after he had a really challenging night at just a middle market, probably 500 cap, or something in that neighborhood type venue, where the house sound system was not really configured correctly, and the house sound guy didn't really know what he was doing. He was really just young, from what I'm being told, and he was a good guy. He just didn't know what he didn't know, and many times that is the case. I usually point that blame toward the bar owners because they don't want to pay most of the time double or triple the amount of money per night to have someone like me in there. They'd really just rather put a $100 a night guy, behind the console, have a warm body back there that knows how to ride faders and, just keep things from catching on fire. I see that a lot. I really honestly do. But I mean, what do you do when you're the guest, band engineer, the BE, as many people call them? When you're the BE coming in there and got to make sense of all that, and usually got to make sense of all that in short order, because a lot of these venues, a lot of these like upper B, lower A, we call them menu venues, because they serve dinner and that sort of stuff, or it's a really big sports bar kind of thing. It could just be challenging, man. I mean, we see so many of these clubs that, the powers to be, the bar owners, just put the absolute bare minimum amount of money in trying to do a racks and stacks kind of scenario, which is what we see a lot of in our area, where the club is providing front of house speakers and amp racks and processing, and you basically bring your own mixer, and they give you a left right or a left right aux sub. That's something we'll talk about here in a minute. And then you provide all your own monitoring, because in today's world, most upper B and most all the A guys are all using in-ear monitors with a split snake, and they have their own mixer on stage that they're controlling their mixes with. So, that kind of makes all those things much more palatable. When you got it, and I've done some of these rooms where I had to bring a wedge system in. And really at that stage of the game, man, I'm just kind of like, I could have just brought a whole system in. I mean, we're bringing everything in minus just a couple, I got a little fellow there trying to get on camera. We're in the wilds of West Virginia, so we have insects and squirrels in the ceiling and all the things that come with living in a rural area. So I'll give you that for free. Nevertheless, so I mean, you got guys that they will buy the cheapest Chinese knockoff stuff they can and put it up because it looks good. I know one big beach venue that has a JBL older line array hanging in it, and when the JBL reps came through town, they asked them to take the logos off the front of the front of house speakers because it sounded that bad, and it was rough. So there's a lot of things to deal with there. That's why most of these traveling bands will hire someone like me. If they can get somebody like me that at least go out on the road for 10-day runs or something like that, or stay within 150-mile radius of where they live, kind of thing, then they will do that, because your job is twice as hard as a band engineer in that scenario, because you just never know what you're walking into. You never know if the system's going to work correctly, if the house guy is going to be present and know what is actually going on with his system. And you're kind of the guy that's got to troubleshoot all that stuff. I have heard horror stories of pro touring buddies of mine. I'm talking like these guys are as far up the ladder as you can get in terms of sound engineers, taking some of this work in the wintertime when they're a little slow and walking into rooms where they spent 45 minutes just to get anything to come out of the speakers, because the system was just so, unmaintenanced, unmanaged, and just things did not want to work. Or I think in that specific scenario I'm talking about, the club owner paid a local guy to just bring a rig out, racks and stacks and throw it up, so that when this national, it was kind of a regional, national kind of country act came to town, then they didn't have to, carry a full-on front-of-house sound system. And, the local vendor just went in there, literally threw the stuff up, ran cables, and never fired it up and checked it out and left and was gone. He was no longer in the building. Elvis has left the building, ladies and gentlemen. So now my buddy is stuck there on a rig he doesn't know, has no idea how things are routed and configured and designed. And he has to get in there and figure all that out and work that stuff out. Obviously, if you've been in this business a few decades, like most of us guys, it's not rocket science, but at the same time, it's not something you want to have to deal with when you're rolling into town 3 hours before downbeat and, doors open, 45 minutes before downbeat, so you don't do the math, dude. You don't have a lot of time there to be goofing around with, somebody else's system. And then there's no system tech on site to even help you do that. Because if that's the case, then the band engineer, the BE, he looks at the system tech and says, hey, man, your stuff's not working, figure it out. And it's the system tech's responsibility, or the house sound guy's responsibility, to figure out what's going on. And the BE just kicks back and lets them do their thing. And when they get it working, then that's when, we'll do sound check and we'll make the best of whatever we have. The gentleman who messaged me this past week about this had just come off of a gig where he was just kind of eating crap the whole night. The system engineer, the sound guy, I wouldn't even call him engineer from what he's telling me. It just sounds like he's somebody who just came out of sound school, or something like that. Maybe he never even went to sound school. Maybe he was a DJ who just kind of knows how to plug stuff in and make noise come out of the speakers. I don't know exactly what the situation was, but the specific things he asked me to talk about was left, right, aux sub, first of all, and then EQing and compression in the house system. He was trying to communicate to the house engineer that he should have his system processor up on a laptop so that they could see house EQ and they can kind of communicate those kind of things, and he can make the adjustments on his mixer that he has to. And the reason that's important, because some people will say, well, man, why don't you just plug your mixer in and just adjust it however you got to adjust it on your EQ, I'm like, dude, when you have redundant EQing like that, it starts causing phasing issues and that sort of thing. It's always best to kind of know where the house EQ is. If you're doing that right, your house EQ really should only have some minor adjustments just for the room. If you're fixing things in a band's mix on the house EQ, you're kind of screwing things up right there out of the gate. That is not how that's supposed to work. You fix things per band at the channel level, because it's specific to that band. The house EQ is specific to that room. Do you understand what I'm saying? Let me say that again. The channel EQs, even some of the subgroups and things like that, are specific to the band. The house EQ, left, right, out, aux out, those EQ settings are specific to the room or the system. Maybe there's something in the system you're trying to correct. That's not something you just immediately go to and start honking on to fix, a bad snare drum EQ, or a vocal mic that's giving you some problems or something like that. You go to the channels to fix those things. Trying to explain that to someone who doesn't understand just basic fundamental mix philosophy can really be challenging, and that can really be frustrating, especially after you just spent, maybe 6 hours on the road getting there. You're beat up from the road already. You just want to do the gig, put on a good show, pack back up and get back in the bus and sleep it off. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to have to navigate through a system that's not configured correctly or someone who doesn't know how to run it. And that's exactly what this guy was doing. The other thing was system compression. The thing that I see going on in a lot of these rooms is, instead of putting the DJ booth into a digital mixer, like even if it's just like an XR18 or hell, you don't even need 18 channels. You really only need about 6 channels. So, if you went with a lower end XR mixer or a Behringer XR or MR Midas or like a UI 16 or, something like that, so that you can really get specific about the DJ line and how you want to compress it, then that leaves the band channels open so that they don't have to deal with that level of system compression you have to do with DJs to keep them from blowing your gear up. Ask me how I know. And I can give you a laundry list of system techs that deal with some of these clubs on a regular basis and are constantly replacing things. Even with that, brick wall compression in place, they're still trying to find ways around it, or they'll plug into other channels to get more gain. They just don't know what they're doing most of the time. Not all DJs are created equally, but most of the time they don't understand, fundamental system tech stuff, and it just kind of is what it is, man. And then you come rolling in as a band plugging into that same now they have, because they don't have a digital mixer with some buzzers and whistles to help them in this situation. Many times they'll use like a $200 analog mixer. I see a lot of the little Yamaha mixers in back rooms of these places, and they have 2 channels for the DJ, 2 channels for front of house band, and a channel for like house canned music, and it's all running through one system processor that's treating everything the same. That's where the mistake is. If you had even the most basic digital mixer in place, then you can compress the DJ separately from the band, separately from the canned music, and have different levels there and set things up a little more specific to which source you're dealing with for the night. So then the band comes along in these things where they're on just a little analog mixer. And let me just say, that $200 preamp and that analog Yamaha MG series amp is not real good, man, and it robs the band of a lot of like low mid frequency stuff. It just doesn't respond correctly. Everything always feels mid-rangey and sterile to me, no matter what I do to it out front. I have one room I mix regularly in that scenario that has come a long way. They got rid of a toxic system tech that they had, and now they got some guys in there that know what they're doing. But those guys are still working with a system that's predominantly 20-year-old Chinese, stuck gear. The amps are legit. They have Crown amps, and everything's kind of running through a Yamaha mixer. So even though that venue has really come a long way, and I don't hate working there anymore, it's still, they don't understand just how good it could really be, They could put a small little Danley rig in there and would just kill that room. It would be so cool, But I digress. We're just talking about working with what we got. So when you come in as a band, all the compression's happening in the system processor, and 99% of the time you can't access that on the fly. That's something that they'll have an installer come in once a year and kind of look at and set and adjust. If they have an in-house system tech that's savvy that way, maybe he can do it and have a laptop hooked up to it. And you can kind of see where front of house EQing is. I always say that when you're into it, at least take a picture of what the front of house EQ is and print that out and leave it back there, so people know what the house EQ looks like. Post it on the wall next to the amp rack or something. So at least the guy coming in knows where the house EQ is, and that can kind of help him do what he needs to do. So yeah, those are super huge challenges. And then the other thing is aux-fed subs in these rooms. Most of the guys putting these systems in don't even know what aux-fed subs is, because a lot of times it's the club owner and his buddy that installed everything. Oh, well, what's so hard about it, man? You just hang some speakers up and run the cables and bam, there you go. Well, anybody who's anybody knows that it's not that simple. Yes, you can hang speakers up, you can run all the cables to it and to the amps, and you can make noise come out of the speakers. That does not mean that it's correct, and it is reproducing the music or reinforcing the music that's on stage in an intelligent way. And then what really, grinds my gears is then sometimes that bar owner or general manager will come to you halfway through the first set and then bellyache and complain about how you're struggling with feedback issues because the room isn't set up right, and they got half the stage out in front of house, and you got a whisper singer you're dealing with. They don't. You try to explain those things to them, they just look at you like a deer in the headlights. They just don't get it. They don't understand what is going on here. Well, Einstein, Dorothy, this is why, you hire somebody who knows what the hell they're doing to install your rig and to tune it. Nevertheless, they come to you and, I can't hear the vocal, or I can't this, or I can't that, or, why does the system sound this way? And I'm always standing there like, I know I'm at least as good of an engineer as your 23-year-old house guy, okay? At least as good. Because I've seen some pretty hot young guys that just have a real natural gift for this, and sometimes can mix me under the table. Look, I ain't trying to be the best thing in the world. I'm just trying to do what I do and have confidence in my skill set and know that what I do is enough and it is worthy of being part of the conversation. So I'm always like, well, then what are you dealing with the other guy? I don't know. I don't. Or they're like, it's not as loud as the DJ, and then you try to explain to them that, there's so much more gain and headroom available when you're only using pre-recorded music and you have no live mics in the room than what it is when you have, 15 live mics in the room, that you have to contend with. Again, deer in the headlights, just do not get it. So when they're putting these systems together, a lot of times they'll just give you left, right, thinking they're doing the world a favor, and there it is. Now, I don't have any problems with that. I mixed left, right for, most of my career, I really didn't get on the aux-fed sub thing. Man, I'm trying to think. 15 years ago, something like that, 12 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark, so the world I came from, like if you go way back, late 80s, early 90s, a lot of those systems were mono, full range, but mono, so we were just dealing with life that way in the analog world. I can remember when stereo became a thing, and I was like, wow, man, now we have more efficient power amps. So, because that was really why you went mono, because power amps were super expensive. They were heavy. They drawed AC power from the wall really hard. So you didn't want to have to use any more of those, and you absolutely had to. So you ran a mono rig, so you didn't have to bring twice as many amplifiers to the gig. Well, when, Class D power, started to come to the scene, and these digital amps started to come to the scene, and you could get much more efficient power without burning up the breaker box into place, then that's when stereo became a thing. And I'm going to say that really got popular, like, early to mid 90s or something like that, or whatever. I mean, probably in the middle market, it was like middle to late 90s. But I know they were running stereo rigs on a lot of lower A-level national stuff, or even upper middle market stuff in the early 90s. Most of the guys that I knew in the early 90s were still running mono. I think I ran mono all the way up until probably 95 or something or whatever. And then got into some of these newer amps. Yeah, it was probably 96, 7, got into some of those newer amps and was able to do stereo. So the people that don't know what they don't know, that put these systems in these places, they think that stereo is all you need. It's the way their home theater system works, or the way their car stereo works, or whatever frame of reference they use to justify why stereo is sufficient. And if you know what you're doing, it is, it's not the end of the road. I would still much rather be aux-fed sub. And it's really not rocket science to be able to provide another line for aux-fed sub. Again, another way where a small digital mixer would really serve these clubs a lot better than an analog, 6 or 12 channel, Mackie or Yamaha mixer or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Just because, even like a UI-16 or a XR-16 or 12 or something like that, they at least have, 2 or 4 auxiliary outs. You can make any one of those auxiliary outs your aux sub. And then that gives you independent control over the subs. It will actually make your system way more efficient, too. So, yeah, when you don't have that and you're somebody who's mixing, 160 shows a year or 200 shows a year, aux-fed sub, or you're, maybe you're 30 years old, 33 years old, and, only been doing this about 10 or 12 years or something like that, 10 years. And on a professional level, and all you've ever done is aux-fed sub. You've never had to contend with a stereo mix and how to kind of carve things out frequency-wise on the channels to try to make sure that everything's going to its proper place. That's a whole other thing, most of the bigger, bigger beach bars that have like 2,000-3,000 people there every week, you're usually aux sub. But the clubs that are like 700-800 and below, most of them are just left-right, so you have that to contend with as well. But for a good, skilled, sound engineer, none of that stuff is a deal breaker as long as the system fires up, it works, and you're giving me something. Then I at least have something to work with, But what's probably more important is your house sound guy not disappearing, I talked to a theater level sound engineer buddy of mine about 2 weeks ago, and this is why I have decided to do this content this week, because I had two different people come to me with these issues, and he said the problem he has is that when he's traveling with his B National up and comer that he travels with a few months a year, that he goes into a lot of venues and it's like, okay, now we're 2 songs into the set and something has quit working and the house sound guy's gone. It's the house sound guy or system tech's job to be readily available. There was a lighting issue. The LD was gone. They put it on auto and walked away, and those guys just disappeared out back smoking cigarettes or reefer or, touching each other's nipples or something. I don't know what they was doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not where they're supposed to be. They're not accessible to the house guy. When I was a house guy, I always stayed right there with the band engineer. If there was anything he needed, there was many times I ran to the stage and troubleshooted issues, even with his band on his gear, if it was something simple and that sort of thing, and figured things out and made things work so that he could stay at front of house. I would take that A2 kind of position, even though we're running everything off of the front of house console. Or, if they're on ears, they're running their own mix on stage. I wouldn't necessarily get into that system. But, if a mic come unplugged or a mic fell off of something, or there's something on my side of the system that came unplugged or has quit working, something to be said there, dude. Yeah, something to be said there. And then I've had, on the other side of this conversation, I was mixing a B National, a big named, I'm not going to mention them because I never try to mention names because I get myself in trouble, and then YouTube's not cool with copywriting stuff or whatever. But I was mixing a 80s hairband and my venue in Frederick, and the night before the show, a local guy who had toured with another 80s hair band that was actually from our area calls me to inform me that he will be coming now and he will be mixing front of house for the band because he has history with them, and that I will be mixing monitors. I was kind of looking forward to mixing them because I mixed every other hair band that we had in there, and there was a handful. Never had any issues. I had that system dialed in. It was a big EAW 850, KF 850 rig. And we could kick ass and take names all night long. And I had the room rung out well. We had a lot of good times there, man. We just really did. But I'm like, I don't have an ego, man. I'm like, okay, dude, yeah, whatever. I'll run monitors, no problem. So we go up, we show up, we do monitors, blah, blah, blah. And then about 3 songs into their set, he mutes the center monitor of the singer. And you ask yourself, now, why would he intentionally sabotage something like that? Well, because he contacted the band 2 days before the gig and told them that I was an idiot and didn't know what I was doing, and he needed something to reinforce that opinion of me. So no better way than to sabotage the monitor setup, because guess who's in charge of the monitors? So I'm immediately, assuming the best of this guy. I'm immediately up there troubleshooting monitors. Nothing that I do is fixing the problem. This went on for, 2 or 3 minutes while the band was playing, maybe 4 minutes. And then finally it mysteriously disappeared. And then later I got to thinking about it. He had come from a culture of hairband musicians who were famous for sabotaging the opening acts and playing stupid little games like this. Needless to say, that was the last time he ever mixed in that room. That's the stuff you got to kind of deal with when you're the house sound engineer. Some of these guys, it's about, job security. So if they can make every house guy look like an idiot, well, then it makes them look better and it makes them have more job security, which never made any sense to me. Like, dude, I have a house gig for a reason. I could be on the road if I wanted to be. I don't want to be. I regularly in that venue, I would say 8 out of every 10 national acts that came through there, or up and coming Nashville guys, or any of the TV show guys, they would always come to me, or their management would come to me and ask me if I would be interested in going out on the road with them. We got another little buddy up here trying to hang out. The sun is out today, so we got all these little lantern bugs that just like to kind of hang out in the sun, and they're in here crawling up my tripod and trying to bust my groove. But we will show them grace and mercy because it's the kind of people we are, dude. It's just who we are, So yeah, I mean, that's sort of what you deal with, dude, when you're, the house guy. You never know what you're getting. And when you're the traveling BE, you never know what you're getting. You got to try to find a way through all that stuff. Clubs could go a long way in helping this situation by putting a competent engineer / system tech in place, and putting a system in place that can reproduce and reinforce what the band is trying to accomplish from the stage. The one condition, when I took that house gig in Frederick, I was not looking for a house gig. I was actually regionally traveling with a high-end corporate band at the time. Was doing okay financially, not great, but okay financially. I was mostly happy in the situation, and I wasn't really looking for a house gig. Really, for all the reasons that I just mentioned, because I just didn't want to deal with a bunch of, bull butter. And then I was freelancing for a large pro touring company in that same town of Frederick at the time, and they kind of came to me and asked me if I wanted to take over this room. And I said, not really, but number one, it's going to have to make sense financially. We were able to work that out with ownership. And then the other thing was, the only reason I'm considering this, and I remember saying this to my friends at the Pro Touring Company and the owner, the only reason I'm even remotely considering this is because you have a system in place here that can get it done. Even when we got 1,000 people in the place, we can get it done. Come on, little buddy. There you go. Yeah. So that was the case, and I took the job and spent 5 years there, mostly happy. I think as happy as what you could be on a house gig. The biggest thing about that situation was the owner never got in my way. And when I said, I'm a very frugal person when it comes to buying gear and stuff like that. I'm not a guy that's constantly going to management saying, hey, we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to buy the latest, greatest sound console and line array and, blah, 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 all that stuff. I'm not that guy. I'm about fixing what we have in place. If it works, let's, when it's working correctly. If that speaker or component works for what we do, I don't believe in spending money. Let's make the best of what we have. And we had a very strong system in place there. It was just a matter of maintenance. We needed a bunch of maintenance to the wedge monitors. We were doing a lot of wedge monitor stuff in that room. It was kind of a big warehouse kind of a room. So it was a less is more sort of mixed philosophy, even though with a KF850 rig, that's kind of funny, because those rigs like to scream, that's what they're made to do. I had the rig like barely on most of the time. Every time I go to the beach, somebody usually offers me a job at the beach, in one of the house rooms there. I'm not saying that I wouldn't take that at some point along the line, because I would love to live at the beach, specifically Ocean City, Maryland, because that's kind of my favorite beach. And a lot of my clients play that circuit down there, so I'm already known in the area, and people know what they're going to get when they get me. But man, there's just a lot of buckshot in that deal. You know, I like running my own business. I like using my systems whenever possible because I know how they're configured. I know they're right. They're very consistent. Talk to my clients. They'll tell you they're very consistent, you know, but there's just a lot of stuff to deal with when you're traveling with a band, you're going from room to room, and you're not traveling with heavy production. You're traveling light fly rigs most of the time. You're usually just happy to have your own, you know, mixer in place. So you just give them a left right or a left right sub and kind of go with it. And that's how it works most of the time. But you know, I told this guy that was reaching out to me a couple of days ago. I said, man, first of all, don't feel alone because we've all been there. We just have. We have been there and we have fought through those struggles. And you just try to make the best of it, get through the night. That's the beauty about live audio. It's only going to last 3 or 4 hours and then it's over. You know, it's not like when you're in the studio and that mix is going to haunt you the rest of your life. You know, and as long as you're working with a band that understands that, look, if something doesn't sound right, it's because something's wrong, because this is not an issue JR typically has, you know. So there's something else going on. And yeah, it's a hard road to hoe. You know, if you're a young guy really wanting to learn good troubleshooting skills, I always recommend getting on the road, even regionally, with like a corporate band or somebody like that, and get in a situation with someone who knows what's going on and knows how to navigate this, and just shadow them and intern for them, and you'll learn tons and tons of troubleshooting stuff. Nothing teaches troubleshooting better than being on a different rig every night, you know, and that's kind of how that scenario works. Even if you have your own system and you're setting up and tearing down every week, that is not a bad place to be either. But if you're on the same system week after week after week, you usually get everything figured out and you get a system in place and you know what the system can do and what it can't do. And you stay within those parameters and you make everybody smile at the end of the night. When you're a traveling band engineer, then you're on a different system every night and it may or may not be correct. There's a number of things that could be a serious issue, you know, that you're going to have to figure out, at least with a house sound guy or a house system tech or something like that or whatever. Many times, if you're lucky, the house guy will be running monitors for you, or he'll have a guy there to run monitors for you, and you'll have a system tech back at your place. A lot of times at front of house, the LD will double as a system tech. So if you're running audio front of house, you can turn to him, tell him what's going on. He can put the lights on auto and go fix the problem while the house guy is still in A2 world, you know, in monitor world. So yeah, that's kind of what's up with all that. It's not a career path for sissies. Let me put it that way. Of course, I say that about the production business altogether. You know, it's a lot of damn hard work. You know, a lot of loading and unloading gear. You know, I always say that's what we get paid to do. We mix the show for free. You know, so there's that. So if you have made it this far into the video, so almost 40 minutes into the video, I want to ask you to please consider becoming a member of this YouTube channel and get in there for about the price of a cup of coffee. You can get in there and be a Grumpy Sound Guy Insider, and you'll get member-only content. You know, that content never gets exposed to the world, that specific video that I do for them every week. It's for members only, you know. And then the other thing is you get to become part of a production community that in many cases has decades of experience. It's a really, really good place to go and ask questions and not have to fight through the public forums that are full of DJs and novice guys who read a lot on forums and think they're the cat's meow and really have never even owned any gear or done any real road time or stuff like that. I am very proud of my Grumpy Insiders here on YouTube and over on Facebook, because it's a group of guys that bring a lot of experience to the table, and I value their opinions. Many times I'm reading their comments and I'm learning something. You know, I never claim to know everything, man. You know, I'm seen and projected as the authority in this stuff because of who I am in social circles online, but I'm never the guy that's trying to stop learning. I'm always trying to learn. I want to know more and more all the time. And let's face it, we don't always get the privilege of mixing on a vast array of consoles and systems and, scenarios and that sort of thing. That's why I was talking about the value of being with a traveling band and being on a different system every night. Most guys don't get that opportunity. So if you're in the market looking for gear, or you're trying to troubleshoot your own gear, maybe you just bought some new gear, that community of guys is a great place to go and ask those questions. Obviously, I'm there, and I will always chime in and give you my 2 cents worth. But what I found out here recently is my people are pretty much giving the same answer I would give, and they beat me to the punch because they're more available than I am. So I just kind of go in and say, yeah, what this guy said, because it's the right answer. That's a very valuable resource for $5-6 a month, man. I mean, yeah. Not to mention, if you're a member or an insider, then I tend to answer your messages quicker. The Grumpy Sound Guy has grown to a place at this stage of the game where it is not even humanly possible to keep up with all the comments. And boy, don't think I don't try, because I was just telling somebody the other day, was asking me about how the content was doing, and I said I'm probably at least 40, 50 hours a week online, answering comments, posting content, or doing, post-production video work to prepare to post content. I mean, there's a lot to this, guys, that you guys don't see. And the membership has really brought some financial resources to the table to kind of light a little bit of a fire underneath of me to continue to do this, first of all, because it's a time-consuming bear. And then also to push it further. And as the content grows and as more financial resources become available, we are 100% planning on firing up an interview process with other guys in the business, going to the trade shows, all the things that you want to see from home. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, every year I'm glued to YouTube during NAMM. I don't really have the time or the money to go run to Anaheim, California and go to the NAMM show. So I'm on there watching videos, man, and so many times no one's really bringing content to the table that a middle market guy like me really genuinely wants to see about new gear. It's a lot of stuff about keyboards and guitars, drums, instrument stuff, and then like this much about middle market pro audio. There needs to be a resource, and I'm hoping to provide that at some point, a better resource that is specifically geared toward the middle market sound engineer and small production company. So I mean, that's kind of what's happening with the money. I'm definitely not making enough to get rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm also trying to reinvest that back into content I know you guys want to see and you want to hear, and just trying to keep things gut level honest. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of channels about production, showing guys setting up and tearing down, gear reviews till the cows come home, and all that kind of stuff. It's why I don't waste a lot of time doing that. I do some of that. We're getting ready. We're ramping up to do some reviews on the Yamaha DZR 15s. I just bought a pair of those, and we're going to review those, and the DHR Coax 12 Yamaha monitors. We're going to do a review on those two in coming weeks. I just want to get a little more time on that gear so I can give you a better first-hand review, and I'm not giving you a review off a spec sheet. I'm giving you a review from what my ears actually hear. But I try to be a channel that's just talking about relevant issues that you guys deal with every week when you show up at the gig. I think that's really kind of my niche, talk about the elephant in the room that no one else wants to talk about, or that guys are afraid to get online and talk about because they're afraid somebody may see that content and label them as hard to work with or something like that. Let me tell you something right now. I've been there, okay? Year 2 and 3, when I really started to get a little bit of traction with this content, the phone got quiet for about 6 or 8 months. Because people really didn't know how to take what I was trying to do. And it took a hot minute, for people to realize that I'm really just trying to pay it forward and trying to reinvest in the middle market community that, number one, needs training, and needs pro level tips, to get from point A to point B. Number two, spend their money wisely. Like the thing that I really try to push forward in my content is you don't have to go and put a second mortgage on your house to have a successful middle market production company. You just don't. Now, it's going to be expensive no matter what you do, but there's a lot of tips and tricks that I try to bring to the table from my experience and from the money I've wasted over the years, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of what we're about here, and the insiders get obviously an inside look at all that sort of stuff. It's kind of the behind the curtain sort of thing, And I tried to gear, like I've been doing a lot of repair videos over there, repairing cabinets and that kind of stuff, talking about servicing amplifiers, all the day-to-day equipment maintenance stuff. It's kind of getting funneled over to the members now, and it's the only place that I vlog. It's the only place where I talk about what's going on in my world, from, what's up with my health, all the way to, what we're planning for, what we're trying to do at this season of the year. All that stuff is member-only content, So if you're over there and you're getting a part of that, awesome. If you're not, I would just ask you to consider it and think about it. Obviously, if you can't afford $5 or $6 a month, then don't do it. Okay. I don't want your money that bad, but if you can afford that and that's not going to change your quality of life or that sort of thing, then by all means, man, get over there. Cause I'm telling you, you'll thank me later, because there's some really good stuff going on over there. I try to do some lives over there from time to time. We haven't done one in about 6 months because I'm just coming out of the busy season. I'm just now getting to a place where I can really start pouring back into content like I usually do over the winter months because we have more time. We got about another week or two of things to button up here at the shop to kind of just batten the hatches for the winter, and then I'm going to be laying heavy into content all winter long, and we may even fire up some of that interview stuff, and get it going. So yeah, love you guys. I'll see you next week.